So I'd like to illustrate how an orchestrator like us needs to think, the kind of level of thinking. Let's first look at what is the nature of our society's pyramid. What really drives things? And so in order to understand that, we need to look at the ownership structure, which really in the United States is about the stock market. And so people are complaining a lot about short-term results, and people are focused on short-term results. Well, that's the fundamental nature of the system. And we've got to remember that the very same people who are complaining are also the owners of these companies. They're just not aware of it. Again, our entire society is oriented around denial and hiding of information. So if you look at the ownership structure, the I has a brick wall, which means that the I is the owner, the stock owners, the shareholders, do not clearly see what companies they own. So for example, you can complain about an oil company, and yet you can relish in the returns on your mutual fund or your pension fund. It's the little old lady that owns the oil company. It's the little old lady and the old retired man that benefit when we extract resources out of countries like Nigeria. They're just not aware of that. And so this allows people to take the high road, to complain and say they care about quality, but not really know that in reality they're part of the pyramid. It's the denial, it's the hiding of information that is critical to ensure that our country can continue to grow without people realizing that all the mess that we create and pollution and all the behavior they don't like is really something that they're part of. And that's something that's very important to understand with the way the system works. And so in terms of the little I's in the rest of the pyramid, the people we put at the top of these companies are really just simply oriented in the same way. You can't compete in a market driven by this environment, the stock market driven by this environment, if you put people in charge who are not in alignment with the reality of the expectations of the owners. This kind of behavior, ultimately, people tend to fall on their swords when they get very selfish and very focused on returns. People claim to care about the environment and this sort of thing, but do they really take the time to try to understand that they're part of the problem? They don't. Again, it's the hierarchy of needs. They want their returns on investment. And so it's up to the orchestrators, us, to really understand that, because there is one factor that we cannot get away from. It's pure Darwinism, pure survival, is that ultimately the system will break down if we don't tune it along a little bit, and that's our responsibility. So people say to me often, I exhibit psychopathic behavior, which I find interesting because I am merely describing what is. Now, in order for me to understand the nature of the markets and the psychopathic natures of the markets and the voters, I myself need to understand the psychopathic personality, which is very, very difficult because it hurts me to understand that, but I understand it very, very well because that's the thing I need to do to be an orchestrator. So what is psychopathic behavior? It's chronic asocial behavior, selfish behavior, inability to learn from mistakes, usually very charming pathological lying. So the psychopathic behavior that people see in me when I'm describing this is merely a reflection of what I see out there. I am telling the truth, which is the psychopathic nature of the markets in which we exist. And so the question is, how do the markets get that way? And that's best described by Machiavelli. In small groups, people can be intelligent and they can be wonderful, but in a large group, in a herd, in a pack, their intelligence gets superseded by that pack mentality, that psychotic, survival, guttural, dog-like mentality. And so when it comes to managing people in this environment, when it comes to governing, you have no choice but to take Machiavelli's advice and manage illusion, manage perception. And that's the thing people don't understand, is there is no choice. Machiavelli describes the kind of behavior that you need to do to manage. Democracy is not perfect. So you have to find the right balance between managing this crazy psychopathic behavior around you without getting thrown out of power, trying to make an effort to do enough to prevent the whole miracle, the whole pyramid from coming down. And so that's the challenge that we face, is we're in the dance between the light and the dark, and some people think the good and the bad. And it's a dance that we have to do, and we have to take that responsibility to do it. So how do we orchestrate this Machiavellian behavior? And we've gone over most of these before. We ensure that we have your classic yes man and yes woman who are smart but not clever and often disposable. Political parties are disposable. We switch from Republicans to Democrats all the time. We recruit from top breeding grounds, which are universities, and we get into more detail on that. Sometimes we need looters, sometimes we need producers. And we, of course, are very well diversified. We can't control what happens in any one company, but we can understand how we can diversify our investments across all of them. Hence, the need for us as orchestrators to protect all of our investments, which really means our responsibility to protect the system.